just when you thought it was safe to put on your headphones, you entered the darkest, wildest, sexiest depths of technology. And here to keep you on the bleeding edge of science, tech, and ethics is the Rated R radio star, the man of tomorrow, the golden stallion of the tech world, Brian Sovryn. He has a huge brain. And now, here's Brian.
Time for that old Sovereign Tech, baby. And, you know, this is a very special episode. A lot of things happen in this, a lot of people. So what this episode is, the Golden Stallion's here for you, don't worry, of course. But this is an episode recorded live from a picnic table. I'm not kidding. From a picnic table at PorcFest 2017. And pretty much I just let like anybody come over that that just kind of walked by and like, you know, saw us all hanging out. I mean, it's kind of weird because like we're sitting there and we're, you know, all I have is this little Zoom H1 microphone. So if you don't know what you're looking at, you don't even know that there's a microphone there, and people think that we're just sort of hanging out. Right? And, you know, when actually we're recording a show, but we're talking about like all this big stuff. And anyway, it was a very interesting experiment in how to do things. Next time, I'll probably find like a lower profile place or something. But it was a really, really cool show. You're gonna hear from Ellen Ball. Woo! She hasn't been on the show in a good while. Paige Peterson, of course, is there. You know, our very own Pixel. Oh baby. Ryan Taylor, who I just love Ryan Taylor, and he's someone that hasn't been on the show in a long time, but he has been on the show in the past. It was some years ago. Let's see, who else? Oh boy. So, well, here's kind of the biggest thing, and I'm not going to leave it as a surprise for you, but Lyn Ulbricht came and sat down with us, and she came on the show and gave an update about what is going on with her son, Ross Ulbricht, and of course the Silk Road case, which was you know, is a real honor to have her on. She's just dynamite, and you know, for her to talk about what's happening as far as that goes. Also be joined by two people that have never been heard on Sovereign Tech before. One of them being Kirill Gourov. I think I'm pronouncing his name right. Anyway, he was. This is a guy I met him previously at a blockchain conference back a couple of years ago at Las Vegas. So he comes on for a little while and talks stuff up, and then we actually have a Sovereign Tech patron, that being Dan Kroll, came on, and boy, was that a fun conversation. Dan is just a sweetheart of a guy. So you're in for a hell of a treat with this episode. I mean, like a whole lot, you know, gets talked about, goes on. We talk about ICOs. We talk about what's happening with Zcash is late. We talk about stuff. We talk about other blockchain technologies. Of course, we talk to Lyn Ulbricht about what's happening with the Silk Road trial. It's really something. So, and at the end of all of that, I will come right back, and I want to talk to you about something that's very exciting that I just released, but we'll save it for the end, kind of make it a quasi-climax for the episode. But anyway, I really hope you listen through. So again, this is being done on an H1. Just like right now, I'm actually recording this on a Kingston HyperX Cloud 2 headset. So I'm not in the studio. I'm out there live, baby, and just, you know, using the microphones that I have. So the audio quality might not be the same, you know, up to snuff level that you're used to when I'm in the studio, but it totally listenable. You know, I think it was actually really good quality. But you're going to hear, I mean, I'm right in the middle of PorcFest, right in the middle of Agora Valley. So you're hearing, you know, like planes go by. You're hearing all this different stuff going by. You're hearing people, I don't know, with firecrackers and whatever else. I mean, you're just hearing all this wild shit. So it's a very live experience. I do want to let you know that actually both of I gave 3 talks. It was I mean, the one morphed into a third talk effectively. But the two main talks that I gave, the one that I did with Paige Peterson and Ryan Taylor, who you'll both hear on this episode, about mesh networking, that's already been released. It was released the same day that I gave the talk. I released it in the Sovryn Tech Patreon feed, and that's the only place you can get it right now. Like it's my own recording, all right? And then yesterday, of course, I'm recording this on Saturday. Would today be the 24th? Yes, Saturday, June 24th, that I'm recording this. I did that, so on the 23rd, right after I did my main talk, not the mesh networking talk, but my main talk in the main pavilion, it was it was a capacity crowd. Okay, I mean, it was just to the hilt. I mean, like there was standing room only in this main pavilion. So I'm not sure how many hundred people that equates to, but anyway, had a great time doing that and got to get out a lot of really cool information. But that talk is also available in the Patreon feed. So if you're not a Sovryn Tech patron yet, you're missing out on getting an entire PorcFest experience, including with this episode right here. And I'm fairly certain there are a few other podcasts, if any, that are really delivering it, in this way, like Sovryn Tech is. So definitely a lot of tech talk here, a lot of talk, some science talk, just kind of catching up also with a Sovryn Tech guest of the past. I thought it was a fun show, very interesting show to do. I've never done a show quite like it. In fact, there's one point, so we're on this picnic table and we're near the free aid tent. And there's this one point where just this little girl who needed like a Band-Aid, and her mommy and the little girl, they come and they sit right next to us, while we're talking, while we're doing the show. And it's like the little girl's just kind of like squeezing in between everybody, doesn't know what's going on. And amazing, and total credit to the professionalism of Ellen Ball. Like this is happening, and she just keeps on talking. She keeps rattling it off. I mean, with all the distractions in the world. So this is a very unique episode. It's very interesting. We'll see how I end up doing this again in the future if I ever do. But there you have it. So enjoy the episode. Like I said, I'll come back at the end to tell you about the very exciting announcement that I have. And at least for me, certainly, I think it's very exciting. And anybody else that I've announced it to has also found it exciting. So anyway, I'll be right back after we play the entire episode, okay, from PorcFest 2017. This is as live to tape as it gets. Here we go. The Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star, here at PorcFest 2017. In fact, I don't know if I tap on this table if I'm going to hear anything. I'm actually doing this show, you wouldn't believe it, in a tank top, and jeans, so all you sweaties can get a little hot about that if you want. But at a picnic table. I'm sitting at a picnic table. And I got to tell you, I'm getting sweaty because I'm getting joined by people here. They're just lining up. They're just sitting down right at the table with me, and this is fantastic. But this is going to be a very different show. I don't know how many news stories I'll get into. If people get bored, maybe I'll start talking about some news stories. But otherwise, I'm going to interview whoever the hell just happens to come walking on by. Right now we're in what's called, I believe, Agora Valley. I skipped PorcFest last year, but this year they had me on. In fact, they had me on. I think I did like 3 talks. I've done a bunch of talks. I got invited to be a judge on Soapbox Idol, or a participant, which, of course, longtime Sovryn Tech listeners can imagine how that would have turned out. But anyway, it's just been it's really been a fantastic time. The organizers got their stuff together here. I've been very, very pleased. Been here most of the week, and just a great time. But I'm not the only person that's been here. And in fact, I got some other news I'm going to get into later because, I just released a book. And that's right, you're going to hear all about that book, but we'll get to it later. And there's a nice little clap coming from the very lovely and intelligent Ellen Ball, who has been on the show before.
Yeah, it's been a long time, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. You were on, what was that, year and a half ago, something like that?
Ellen killed the electric car, that's the one.
See, you remember the name of the episode. Don't worry, I did too. But but it's been a while.
So I'm not crazy.
Yeah. But it's so cool to have you on. So cool that you're here. Of course, you're in triple black and everything. Yep. So people. In fact, everybody surrounding me seems to be in almost all black. Close enough, anyway.
Well, it's the only way to be.
Yes, thank you. You're exactly right. It is the only way to be. And I'm going to actually take my sunglasses off here, so that way there's some eye contact or something.
and I can see people better. But anyway, so Ellen, what is going on? How has your PorcFest been? I've been enjoying mine. How about you?
Oh, I've absolutely been enjoying it. I just showed up here yesterday at about 5:30. I set up my tent, and it started downpouring. So I ran over to the VIP tent, and I've just been running into all sorts of friendly, familiar faces.
Sure.
All sorts of delicious food on sale here. People are very willing to just stop and have a conversation, impromptu.
Oh yeah,
it's
definitely.
Great.
Yeah.
I haven't had to plan anything. I can just walk around and I find people and we have fun.
Yeah, when Stephanie and I, whenever we come to PorcFest, we're always, and Stephanie's actually, she's volunteering at the free aid tent right now, which we're right next to. So maybe she'll be able to come on the show for a few minutes at some point during this. But yeah, whenever we come, it's like, let's not really make any plans because, it can get kind of crazy when her and I are. You probably get it too, Ellen, because you're a bit of a deal here, and then the whole Liberty thing and everything. I mean, I think that's fair to say.
Deal like half off.
Yeah.
Buy one free.
Hey, that's all right. So we got a Sovryn Tech fan just walking by with their dogs. Fantastic. So anyway, but yeah. So let's see. Where was I? This is going to happen a lot. But no worries. So, and there's Stephanie walking by. But yeah, we just constantly get stopped. Like we're just walking. You can't walk, more than a few feet. And I'm not complaining. I'm just saying you can't walk more than a few feet. And then suddenly, somebody's saying, hey, and there's just a conversation that strikes up. So, what kind of conversations have you had? Has it been just like meeting up old friends? Has it been Liberty stuff? What's going on?
Yeah, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of, hey, I haven't seen you since last PorcFest.
Right.
And then there's a lot of, just meeting new people, which I really love because then you can discover if you have interests that are on the same wavelength or not.
Sure.
This morning I got into a great conversation about Dean Cain. And he's starting up this
Dean Cain? Like
yes.
Superman? Or
no,
wait,
the inventor of the Segway?
Oh, Dean Kamen, right?
Kamen.
Yeah, Dean Kamen. Okay. No, that's
Jeez.
Okay. That's cool. Yeah, he's out of Manchester. A lot of people don't know that. Like a lot of his business is
right in Bedford.
Right.
He has his own helipad, which is incredible. And he's actually starting up a lot of biotech industry in the mill yards in Manchester. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it's all government funded, and he's really chasing after doing research for the Army. He has a program called Army, but it's a good opportunity for people who are looking to get into that sort of work.
Sure.
But, so I've talked to people about that.
Right. He has some kind of, doesn't he have like a water purification project or something like that going?
Oh, he has so many projects.
Yeah, he does. You're right. It doesn't even matter. He's doing so much. It's true.
He did the first robotics competitions in New Hampshire, all of New England, really.
Yep.
So he's just got a lot going on.
Yeah.
But, I enjoy talking to people about that because I'm studying engineering, so...
Well, tell us about that. What do you got going on, personally? Last time we talked, you were in college. What's happening now? How are things in the world of Ellen Ball?
Man, so I graduated with an associate's degree recently, and I'm moving on to the University of New Hampshire to study for a bachelor's in bioengineering. Right now, I'm doing a chemical engineering internship at a nylon company. Mm-hmm. So I'm doing data analysis, I'm helping them improve their processes. It's all really fascinating, and I love working with an engineer because they have this very results motivated line of thinking. It's very logical, a lot of curiosity too, which is I'm all about curiosity, asking questions. Why is it this way? Can we make it better?
Absolutely.
How can we make it better?
Yeah, no, well, that's cool. So, so you're really knee-deep in developing a lot of this stuff, making all of this happen. I think that's fantastic. So you got that going on. What are the things happening, maybe? You mentioned Dean Kamen talking about that. What any tech insights you see going on, that any developments that are, really exciting you? When you were last on, we were talking about the electric car, which you handily destroyed, I thought. But,
thank you.
Which is, unfortunately, seems like people are still pushing for it. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that industry is going to bomb at some point. It's not going to make it worldwide.
Right. We talked about that, how, really a lot of the developments by other companies for the electric car is really, the point you made was that it comes down to, just making their spreadsheets look good. It offsets all of their, V8s and all their other, vehicles and everything. So, and then we also talked about 3D printers, which was a fascinating conversation. Yep. So, but what else? What, any technologies, anything out there that's like really exciting you, in that regard? I mean, if I'm catching you flat-footed, go ahead and take a second. No problem. We can edit.
Well, there is a 3D printer technology that I'm excited about that I've heard about recently, which is actually starting to really take off here in New England, which is metal 3D printing. So they're actually desktop machines now. These used to be like huge and dangerous things that you could only have in labs because, when you melt metals, they give off toxic fumes and you're not supposed to breathe them in. But now they have desktop 3D printers for metal. And they have, sintering technology, and they use ceramic for the support. So it just, melts away. It's really amazing.
Wow. Okay. All right. I'm trying to envision this, but still, it's nothing to that level. What do you think is the most complex thing that you can imagine getting made with it? I mean, at what level? I mean, because, we talked about this last time you were on. The 3D revolution, or the 3D printer revolution, isn't going to be creating houses anytime soon, right?
Right.
So what would be, the best potential use case, maybe, that you could imagine with metal 3D printing?
Best potential use. Well, I imagine if you're in a pinch and you need to fabricate something, which often happens if you're, working on your house or if you're working on your car, you just, you need to fabricate some piece of metal that is unique to your needs.
Right.
That's where it will really blossom and be in its heyday. But if we're talking about mass producing goods, that's not where it's going to shine.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, for uniquely shaped or uniquely purposed things, it'll certainly be good for that.
Well, I think that can be really cool because certainly, a funny thing. I had this idea for on Amazon. This might sound ridiculous. I had this funny idea of selling little statues of Satan, but designed by me and everything.
Beelzebub
Beelzebub
by Brian Sovryn.
That's right. Yeah, and I think it would be huge. It'd be this big deal. But I don't have it's not like I'm going to be Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore and Ghost, and I'm here with the on the sculpting table doing this crazy sexy scene or something. But if I had a 3D printer that could do metal, that'd be fantastic. It's around metal gods all over the place.
You would be doing the same thing, except on the laptop.
Right.
With the software. You'd be designing it, but it would be like you were molding some sexy satanic sculpture.
Exactly.
With your hands.
Bingo. Okay. So, yeah. So, all right. So I'm going to look into this. If it's happening in New England, I need to make this thing happen. So that's pretty cool. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's certainly an exciting thing to talk about. That's an exciting thing kind of going on.
Yeah.
How much longer do you have going? What industry exactly are you hoping to get to? When you're done with all of your internship and schooling and all of that. What's the dreams here?
I have so many dreams. It's hard to choose between any of them, really. But I guess the first one that I would focus on is because I'm majoring in bioengineering. I want to get a job in something like that. And a lot of bioengineers go into pharmaceuticals or the food industry. But what I would really be interested in is anti-aging technology.
Oh, now you're talking. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so, well, that's fantastic. So, have you looked into, what aspect of anti-aging technology maybe do you think has the most viability? What would you want to work in? Are we talking cryonics or, something else? Maybe more what's his name there, ending aging. Oh, it's terrible. I can't remember his name. Stephanie would know because she narrated the audiobook. But Aubrey did great. That's it. Took me a second. So I have no internet here, folks, just in case anybody's wondering. I am totally running. I always run off my brain anyway, but I have no connection to look anything up. So, but what are you thinking? Any specific direction that you're considering?
My instinct, my inclination is to go with some sort of technology that would prevent damage to the DNA so that when it splits and replicates, it doesn't pass on that damage. Mm-hmm. So that could be life prolonging. Or perhaps it could keep you from showing signs of aging for longer. It's just a matter of figuring out how to do that. What is safe, what is practical. Is it something that we can even do? Because it might just be a limit to biology that, we're all bound to die at some point.
Yeah,
Maybe
sure.
There's just nature has set up too many barriers and we won't be able to find a solution. But I'm going to try and find out. I'm going to put in the work.
Well, I was intrigued. Recently, I heard about the Greenland shark, and they find they call it the Greenland shark because it's near Greenland and everything. Certainly there's something to be said for the cold. But it can live something 400 years. I mean, just an insane, it's really crazy. So at least when I see that there's one creature that can live for 400 years. Granted, sharks are very different than humans. That gives me a little bit of hope.
Absolutely.
Because I think, for me personally, finding biological solutions, I don't want the transhumanism stuff. I mean, I appreciate it, I respect it, I understand why people want to use it, but I would just, I want it to be like the biological where maybe you're just like replacing or grafting an arm or something like that, and you're not like screwing one in. You know what I mean? So that's kind of the, my thoughts on that. I mean, what do you see as kind of the, maybe just in, brief opinion, what do you think about transhumanism in general? Replacing robot parts, giving people robotic arms, all that. I mean, what do you think?
Man, well, I would rather, drink young stem cells in order to keep myself going for longer. But honestly, the thing is, I have mixed feelings about this because I would be willing to replace my entire arm or my entire leg or something like that with a robotic replacement if it was like damaged and I couldn't use it anymore, or if I just felt like I was too weak and I needed robotic legs and I wanted to like run a marathon or something.
Right.
Sure, I'll go with robotic legs, but when you lose part of your body, you lose part of yourself, because your brain and your body, your mind, like it's all integrated. It's not like it's two separate things entirely. Like you have a soul and you have a body and they're both separable. No, they're part of the same system. If you take away part of that and replace it with something metallic, you're still missing part of yourself.
Yeah.
You'll never have that feeling back. I mean, unless that technology gets good enough to where you can actually like integrate the nerves and the neural networks with the robotic replacement. But that's, far, far, far in the future.
Yeah.
So maybe that's possible.
Right.
But I don't think it's going to be the same.
Yeah.
I would like to keep my own natural born body.
Yeah, exactly.
But, robotic replacements, they do the job.
Yeah, I mean, the main argument that I always hear against robotic replacements is usually where it's something to the effect of, like, maybe they're, muscle memory, things like this. Like, there's parts of the human body that give you more information than maybe you realize, and that, or make up more of who you are. Like not that you have a soul, but what comprises you as unique as an individual. And that maybe, like losing even like something like a leg, that like there's the chance that you lose certain degrees of empathy or something like this. And and so when you replace it with like a robotic part, that robotic part doesn't have all these extra little feelings. I mean, maybe they could be replicated though. I mean, I don't know. It's tough. How many connections does the human brain have to the rest of the body? I mean, it's in the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, right?
Yeah, and how can we quantify all of the connections that our brain has with the rest of our body?
Right.
How can we delineate that? I mean, I don't think we know enough about our own biology to say that, we get these certain feelings from our legs or from our arms.
Yeah, exactly.
And we can just replicate those.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So, anyway, well, I'm definitely interested in where that can go, what exactly we can do with that technology. Boy, it is amazing how well we're recording this right now, and we'll tell people why.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, the other area certainly that I'm interested in is cryonics. I mean, is that something you've looked into much? Freezing the head or even the whole body? I'm certainly more interested in the whole body. What do you think about that?
I would be nervous about that because, when you freeze a body, your bloodstream, I don't know if you would fill your blood vessels with antifreeze or something like that to keep it preserved, and like maybe.
Yeah, when you get down to the chemistry of it, you're like, I don't know about this.
Yeah, I mean, what's going on there? Because if you leave your blood in your body, then it crystallizes and then it like shreds all your capillaries. So.
Yep.
There's
That's a great point.
all sorts of things you have to worry about.
Yep.
So there are many hurdles to that, and if we figure it out, who knows?
Yeah.
I think it would be really disorienting to, go to sleep one day and then wake up the next day and it's 300 years later and you don't know where you are or where your family is.
Yeah.
Like everyone you know is dead and the world is completely different. Like maybe robots rule the world at this point. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah.
It would be very disorienting, but it'd be a fascinating technology nonetheless.
Yeah, I get excited about it because I feel like it's the technology it seems a little more viable, a little more possible, a little more achievable than does, figuring out the other things we were talking about, like, replacing or, just like constantly rejuvenating, drinking stem cells, the human body as it is. But I mean, that's not to say that those technologies also aren't important, just it might be like on an order of priorities. Like, okay, how can we at least keep people from dying for right now so that way we can develop the rest of this technology and then bring them all back? But I wonder what the incentives even are for that, I mean, like, I feel, well, anyway, that's a whole other conversation to be had. So, but we also have, if you want to stick around, Ellen, you can. It's great having you on and talking about all this.
Thank you.
But we also have another guest who I would love to have on. This is a guy, he's a Sovryn Tech patron, long-time listener, and I consider a friend. So yeah, you can scoot right on. I mean, this thing's kind of omnidirectional. Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
So everybody can hear each other. But can I say your full name? Is that all right?
Please.
All right, Dan Kroll.
Kroll.
And this is a Kroll?
Yeah.
See, I like Kroll. You sound like the villain from Star Trek Beyond, know? But
I think someone's made that observation before.
have they really?
Well, like, I don't know.
Who are they? I want to date them. No, I'm kidding.
maybe it was like some other movie called Kroll or something like that.
Oh, Kroll! No, okay. So Kroll is this 1982 film. It is very cheesy, but it's well known for having. In fact, it's kind of Star Trek related. Well known for having. It has one of the greatest scores ever done by James Horner, the late great James Horner, and it. Boy, yeah, it's this kind of wild fantasy, sort of playing off of Star Wars and everything, but there's a very famous weapon in it called the glaive, which is like this multi-bladed, I don't know, it's an odd-looking thing. But anyway, it's an interesting movie. I really enjoy the hell out of it from the 80s. Very cheesy, though. You gotta have that special appreciation that apparently I have. I get constantly insulted for my taste in things, so, but including by Dan himself.
Well...
But yeah, he just says, well. So yeah, you do fit into the Kroll thing, too. I didn't even think about that. I was just, well, that's what I get for being a Star Trek fan. Of course, I'm not the only Star Trek fan here. Ellen is one of the biggest Star Trek fans I know. Woo! Yeah, right on. I love it. So how about you, Dan? You a Star Trek fan?
Yeah, I can't compare myself to you guys as far as Star Trek.
Well, who can compare to Ellen? Come on.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, seriously.
I was wearing a Star Trek badge yesterday.
That was awesome.
That's right.
Well, you don't have to tell me the story behind that now. Okay, yeah, it's either Voyager or maybe it was even Star Trek Online because it looked really futuristic. So anyway, go ahead, Dan. Tell me about your love of Star Trek.
Yeah,
I'll kick you out.
Oh boy. Well, let me tell you. No, I was a TNG fan, I guess, growing up. I didn't really ever watch the original much. I liked the pilot was interesting. Yeah, should I just be kicked out then?
Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking. Wow, you read my mind, Dan. You're good. You're a natural at this. Okay, yeah, no, but go ahead. Keep talking.
No, I don't know. I thought the Q character was very fascinating and scary. I got into Voyager, at least the first few seasons when it came on, but I didn't, I never watched it all the way to completion.
Right.
So yeah, I'm not a giant fan, but I definitely appreciate Star Trek.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, would you say, let me ask you this, Dan, because I've never had you on the show. I mean, Star Trek, I ask a lot of people, I've done conferences, I've been at events where they have said, I'll ask them, like, what got you into tech and all this stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And almost across the board, they'll say Star Trek.
Right.
Would you say was that true for you at all?
I don't think it was. I think it was more about video games, wanting to program video games.
Oh, I can appreciate that, certainly. Absolutely. So, yeah. Now, I mean, so Ellen, with you, when did you watch Star Trek as a kid growing up? And we'll talk about tech stuff. Don't worry, folks.
Not at all.
Okay.
I only started watching it after I moved to New Hampshire, and I heard so many people talking about Star Trek that I felt like I was missing out on something.
Yeah.
So I started with the original series, and
right,
went all the way through to Enterprise.
Oh man, what do you think of Enterprise?
So far, it's pretty good. I mean, it's a little disjointed so far, but I hear there's a longer story arc coming up in the further on seasons, so I'm excited to see that. Yeah, when you get to season 3, you get the Xindi War, and then season 4 makes the whole show worth it. But you got to kind of toe the line to get to that. So anyway, Dan,
you work on some very interesting projects. What's one of the? Weren't you doing something? Not the Sandstorm thing. Weren't you doing some other kind of like Wikipedia thing?
Right.
That had to do with like libertarian knowledge or something along those lines. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it's a website called I Can't Believe It's Not Government.
I love that name.
You can go to itsnotgov.org if you want to see it.
Brilliant URL. Keep going.
So the idea is basically, part of libertarian apologetics, I think. It ends up being, this is what...
We do need to apologize for libertarians. It's true. Like, it's so bad. No, I'm kidding. Sure. Apologetics, of course, means defending, not apologizing.
Of course.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's a whole lot of, this is how things would work if we did have a free society. And,
right.
And the other side will, I think, very rightly point out, well, that sounds nice in theory. Well, so does communism or whatever. Well, show me where it's ever worked, ever in history. And the thing is that there are a lot of examples that people kick around now and again, but they're not. But you don't necessarily have them at your fingertips. You don't always remember the right examples for the right conversation.
Right.
And also, on top of that, I think it's worthwhile to really investigate the degree to which it really was a success or wasn't a success, so that we can kind of learn from the failures. And so with all that in mind, I decided I wanted to make a wiki where it would be done kind of by category. You'd have like I don't know. I'm trying to think of something that wouldn't upset Brian Sovryn. But okay, I'll start with something.
No, just pick anything.
Okay.
I'll just make fun of you if it's really bad. So.
Regulation, right? So like instead of having the FDA, how is food regulated without the FDA? And it is.
We've got the lovely and hyper-intelligent, or wait, no, that's Dr. Stephanie Murphy. We have the inimitable. I'm just calling everybody lovely. Anyway, we've got Paige Peterson walking by. Maybe she'll come back to join us. But we're recording right now, so whenever you want to jump in, you come on by. So anyway, Dan, sorry. All right, so what you were talking about, you're giving an example. What was the example? Is it something contract so I can yell at you?
No, I can give you something you'll yell at me much more than that.
Oh, excellent. All right,
okay.
Good. People are going to love this.
Okay, so for road regulation, for regulating drivers,
okay.
I gave the example of the tracking devices that insurance companies will put into cars,
which they'll do.
Right, and the way it works is that it reduces your premium if you're a good driver.
Okay.
And so I argue that the insurance companies are therefore, in some sense, regulating driving habits. Now,
okay.
Now it bothers me too. But I know that there are a lot of libertarians that it doesn't. I mean, it probably bothers Brian much more than even me.
Yeah, sure.
But I thought at least it was an interesting example to look at. Maybe, it's just something to throw out there. I'm sure plenty of other libertarians wouldn't find much wrong with that.
But it's insurance companies kind of solving this issue without government, like without regulation, without government backing, without the gun, etc. Right? Is that the concept?
That's the concept. That's okay. Probably the most offensive thing I have on the site. A more interesting thing is sort of related, the Insurance Institutes for Highway Safety. They do a lot of the same stuff that the transportation, I forgot the government agency that does transportation, but they do safety tests of cars, and they have a higher standard than the government. And usually when you see a car commercial, it says that this exceeds government standards or whatever, it's usually because, as I understand, they passed the standard from the IIHS.
Okay.
Also, they do some research into what makes for good traffic rules.
Okay.
And so, I think that kind of peeks into the possibility of what could happen if the government weren't making the traffic rules. Why would anybody want to make, efficient traffic rules and plan in a larger scale? Well, here's where an insurance company is interested in doing that, because they want to make safer roads so that insurance is cheaper, basically.
Yeah, I mean, Ellen, actually, I'm curious of your take on the idea of the website in general. We'll get to that in a second. I mean, that's interesting. So, I mean, you definitely have a different outlook on it, because, like, when I, hear those kinds of stories, like, I'm looking for the perspective of, honestly, where are they going to cheat me out? Like where are they trying to make more money? But, like, you're talking about how to make things genuinely safer, which I guess in the end is them being able to hold more money because they're not paying out for more accidents, right? So that's their incentivization.
Yeah, and actually that is an interesting point, and I've kind of wrestled with this in my mind. There must be a point, like, they can't make it too safe or they'll put themselves entirely out of business.
Right.
But I think that if, on the other hand, if they make it safer, there's a certain point where if they make it safer, then they can, then the payout will be less, and then they can lower the prices, and then people will buy more of it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, so like if let's say there's a car that's, let's take extremes, if the car that's really dangerous, and the insurance policy on top of it is prohibitively expensive,
right?
And then they make the car, if they make the car safer, but not, the car is just as expensive, and then the insurance on top of that car will be less, and then it'll be just within the threshold that someone would want to buy it, and then now that's a more expensive insurance policy that the person bought that they wouldn't have otherwise. So I think there's kind of that kind of dynamic happening. But there's, again, a certain point where if they make it perfectly safe, then they put themselves out of business. There's some kind of line, yeah.
Sure. So Dan for president. So Ellen, I mean, so the website, you get the concept of the website that he has, where he's like laying out all these, real world examples where, guess what, without government, this, I hate the fact that this term is kind of, I think it's really been sullied, but I do like the term spontaneous order, mm-hmm. but unfortunately some asshats have really taken that and kind of ruined it. But anyway, I mean, you really do end up with the spontaneous order, regardless of the government's there or not. I mean, that's kind of the point. I mean, what do you think? Does this website sound beneficial? I mean, how do you feel? You can make fun of Dan if you want, if you think it's ridiculous. But anyway, go for it.
Okay. So I really like the title. I can't believe it's not government. Yeah. Brilliant. I thought of butter as soon as you said that.
I know, you're picturing Flavio, or
yeah.
what is Fabio? That's what it was. Fabio with his, his hair flying and everything. He's got his big muscles. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, my salivation was just...
Yeah. There you go. No government, it's exciting. Anyway, yeah.
Right, yeah, but my only holdup is that not everything that is not government is good.
Ooh.
So there's that.
Somebody's
caveat.
been listening to Sovereignty a little too much, I think. Anyway, all right, keep going.
Yeah, maybe I've been radicalized too much. I don't know,
we love that word, radical. All right.
Yes. So I guess that would be my only concern is like, are you just putting things on there that are not government and are regulatory, or things that you think are genuinely beneficial to humanity?
Well, I think that there's going to be a lot of disagreement about what's beneficial or not. I just want to put the facts out there, and then if people want to look at this particular example versus that particular example and say, well, this one, yeah, it's without government, but it's not worth it because it sucks for some other reason. I'm not necessarily advocating.
You're not taking an ethical stance on this site. You're just saying this is a case where government did not create this.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair.
And I mean, for that matter, I'm definitely interested in cases where something might offend the standards of let's say a capitalist, anarcho-capitalist type, where it's maybe something more along the lines of red and black
mm-hmm.
type of stuff. Like, for instance, there was a story, I think they do this in Portland or San Francisco, where they do renegade bike lanes on the streets.
Okay.
That's a real, like, I guess that's not necessarily anti-ANCAP, but it's not in that flavor anyway. It's like more of the sort of left-wing anarchist type of activism, like direct action. And I'm not saying that that's I support it or don't in as much as it's on this site, but I want to put it out there as just an example, and then people can kind of look at it from there and draw conclusions.
Sure, fair enough. I mean, I think Ellen's point is sound, that, well, wait a minute, like, what's going on here? Like, is this stuff really ethical and whatever? But if your point is like across the ideological spectrum, just as long as it's a case without government, that's what you're going to put on there. As long as you're honest about that, hey, what the hell, So I think that's fine. I imagine Paige is sitting right next to me eating some amazing looking food, and I am just like... Pork roast. So I imagine she has comments on these renegade bike lanes. So because Paige was quite the biker. But now, so Dan, I mean, you're out of California, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and you've got an interesting project. I might want to talk. I might want to have you on separately to talk about this.
Okay.
Because you're doing things with sandstorm.io, which I've brought up a few times recently on the show. And I would, if other people are interested in developing that sort of thing, I think it would be fascinating if they could get on board with you. So anyway, Paige, are you still eating, or are you open for talking?
No, I'm good.
If you're still eating, that's fine.
I mean, I am, but I'm good.
You're good, but you can talk?
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to move the microphone
Hopefully
just a little bit. No, it doesn't matter. And whatever, we're at PorcFest, this is all very off the cuff. So We're 30 minutes in.
Okay.
I still have to go another hour and a half for crying out loud.
man.
So anyway, so if anybody wants to go off and do their own thing, that's fine. Or if you want
Yeah.
to stick around, you're welcome to.
I'm
Your
gonna
call.
go listen to the lovely and intelligent Tatiana Moroz.
Yeah, now
Yeah.
there, boy, that's a recent guest, and she certainly is both of those. I can definitely say that she's a very intelligent woman. So, anyway, Ellen, thank you so much for being on. It was great to have you on. We're going to have you on again really soon, I think so. I think
Thank
we got to
you.
have you over to the studio and do
Oh,
it
man.
right. You know what I mean?
I am honored.
All
Yes,
right.
I would love to be on again, and thank you for having me on.
Yeah,
It was really
no
great.
problem. So, okay, enjoy
Good to
PorcFest.
see you.
Good to see you.
All right, and
Enjoy Tatiana. I'll
yeah.
probably join you soon.
yeah, right on. So, Dan, you want to stick around, or you're?
Yeah, I'll stick around for a while.
Okay, all right. So, we've got this here. I imagine everybody can kind of get picked up on what's going on. So, Paige, geez,
Woo!
what is going on? How the hell is life?
It's great.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, PorcFest is I mean, it's quieter this year.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not as like happening as it was the last
Not as
few
wild,
years.
perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't, that's not necessarily bad.
Sure.
What I'm thinking is really cool is that a lot of people were saying that Rogers is for sale.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
For like $4 million.
Wow. This is a lot of land. I gotta
Yeah.
admit.
Yeah.
That's intriguing. Then what could happen with that?
Exactly.
You
And
know?
like honestly, one of the better views, I bet, for a campground in the area.
Yeah. You know, it'd be really interesting. So this is kind of a little bit of insider talk, but for people that don't know, so PorcFest, I didn't explain this earlier, but I assume anybody listening to this is by now at least looked into PorcFest. But it's an event run by the Free State Project. Now, the Free State Project is actually, if I'm not mistaken, it's a non-profit organization. And honestly, I wouldn't mind at all if suddenly it said, figured out how to, I don't know, get Patrick Byrne or something, who he's here, the CEO of Overstock, say, like, give us a hand, let's buy this place out, and let's turn this thing into a for-profit organization. This is something, actually, Stephanie Murphy has talked about often enough. I think that could get interesting, because, they would just run this, and, I think some really interesting things could happen out of that. So I didn't know that. That's fascinating. Go ahead.
What is the point of the Free State Project anymore?
Well, that's another conversation to be had at some point.
I mean, like, I think it would be cool to own this just, like, as a space and, like, as a business. And,
Sure.
I don't know.
Maybe a cooperative of a bunch of...
Yeah, cooperative run. Like, find different kinds of events. Honestly, I bet, like, Roger just doesn't know how to reach out and find cool events to be hosted here.
Sure. It's a fair point. Yeah.
There's plenty of opportunity, I think, for such a large camping ground.
Yeah.
Spot, so.
All right. Well, I think let's table for now the Free State Project conversation, because that's a good one to have at some point.
Yeah.
But we're around, so we can talk about that sort of thing sometime.
Yeah.
But anyway, so another event that you were at recently, and of course, if I'm asking anything that you don't feel comfortable talking about, you just tell me and say no, I can't answer that.
I'm open.
All right.
I'm open on this.
So
show.
you were at Consensus.
Yeah.
In New York. This
Yeah.
is what first week of May, something like that.
Yeah, something like
And
that.
there have been some pretty wild times happening after that. I mean, crypto prices of all kinds of
Yeah.
cryptocurrencies just going through the roof.
Yep.
And some of them have held pretty well.
Yeah.
Now you work for Zcash.
I do.
Let's pretend, I don't know, whenever you want to say your Zcash hat is on or not, but
Yeah, I don't know anymore. I don't, my opinions don't represent
the company.
that of the company.
Fair
I'll say
enough.
that.
All right, fair enough. So, but Zcash is doing very well for itself right now.
Sure.
Price-wise, things are
Yeah.
looking good, and you got some interesting, happenings that went on. We might talk about those. So, but you were at Consensus, and what was your feel there? This is considered like the largest Bitcoin or blockchain event in the world right now.
Yep.
So you've got everybody there, and obviously now there's a lot of perhaps even government types, a lot of banks, a lot of all this. I don't think that's really your scene, but tell me about it. What did you think of Consensus?
So as maybe as a CEO or executive of a company, of a cryptocurrency or blockchain company, I think it's probably a really good networking event.
Sure.
I don't know anyone that went to any of the talks, really. And I didn't go to any of the talks except for the ones that Zuko was on, participated in. So, I'm pretty sure the talks are just there to attract people and to put big names on things to get everyone in the same space, but
yeah.
And so you can charge a lot of money. But for the most part, I think it's a really good opportunity for, just general business networking. But that's just not my thing, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm not good at schmoozing.
Yeah. I mean, were you there to represent Zcash
I
pretty
was.
much? Yeah. Was there anyone else on your team?
Zuko, myself, and Jack Gavigan. Jack is our COO. He does a lot of the kind of trying to get the enterprise collaborations going.
Sure.
So he used to work for a bank. He used to work for a bank for a long time.
Okay.
So he's kind of well established in that.
Yeah, so he knows what other companies' needs are. I mean, that's pretty much
and
the
he knows
gist.
how to talk to them and speak their language and all that.
Yeah, boy, and that is a whole different lingo. I can definitely say that.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really your bag, just a great
networking.
It
wasn't my bag. Yeah.
There's not is it surrounded by? I mean, I think the cryptocurrency space kind of started off as a very anarchist kind of thing.
Yep.
I mean, in my opinion.
Yeah.
In fact, PorcFest,
New Hampshire.
Right. I mean, PorcFest, where we're at, was at one point and Liberty Forum, which is another event held by the Free State Project, was like the largest Bitcoin event in the world. Just a few years ago.
Not this year though, because why? Because the fees are too big.
Oh,
you can't spend Bitcoin here because all the plenty of vendors accept Bitcoin still, but no one wants to spend Bitcoin for a cup of coffee when you have to pay a cup of coffee for the fee.
No, it's absolutely true. In fact, I might have talked about this on a Patreon episode. I don't know if I mentioned it on a Sovereign Tech Prime show. But, I pay for private internet access as my VPN company, and I pay for it with Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And it literally costs double the price of the VPN, just to use Bitcoin with it. And that is a huge problem. And that's not going on with Zcash, right? You're not running any of these fee issues or anything like that.
No, we're still kind of deliberating how we're going to do the fee thing. I think we're kind of turned off by this, market-driven approach.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting conversation.
Yeah, it is. I don't know how much I would want to say about it.
No, that's
there's
fine.
A lot of we really haven't talked about it a lot.
That's fine. Yeah.
Right now, it's a very basic standard fee.
Sure.
We don't. Yeah, obviously, it's not going in the direction of usability for Bitcoin, people that are using Bitcoin, the fee-driven market that is implemented in Bitcoin right now.
Okay, no, fair enough. So, I mean, back on track. So there weren't a bunch of anarchists at Consensus.
There probably were, to be honest, because they probably just got Bitcoin rich, cryptocurrency.
Yeah,
rich.
right. Good point. Yeah.
So there was kind of a mix of suits and hoodies, you could say.
Yep.
But mostly a lot of suits. And so Zcash also announced our partnership with JP Morgan at that event.
Well, let's hold on to that one. I want to talk about that in just a second. But I mean, Dan, you're here now. Yeah, there's the little the lizard Jews are coming out. Oh no. But I mean, Dan, you're hearing all this. I mean, what do you think about this? You know about Zcash, right? Certainly, I've talked about it on my show, and you listen.
Yeah.
So I mean, what's your take on everything you're hearing? I mean, I know there was just a lot that we unpacked. You got to have stuff running through that head of yours.
Yeah, no,
I
definitely do. Actually, I was kind of thinking it would be great to have a chance to come on the show sometime and disagree with you about certain things.
Oh boy,
because I do find myself yelling at my laptop when we say something, and So on the
you'd be amazed how many people say that. So don't worry, you're not alone.
No, and it's great. I think it's a mark of a fantastic show.
Sure.
But on the question of, I know that you don't like when things kind of go mainstream or legit, let's say, right?
Yep.
We want to keep Bitcoin anarchist. It's like it's almost like a Bitcoin hipster thing. Like now it's mainstream. And
I'm the ultimate hipster. Yeah. You're absolutely right.
And so here's the. I mean, I understand there's something. I agree with that to a certain extent. Here's where I would question it somewhat. Do you think that China, for instance, is more or less free for having a highly regulated internet versus no internet at all? Because right now it's still possible to get around the Great Firewall, right? It's getting harder and harder. Granted, this may ruin my point ultimately, but as of now, I would argue they are more free for having mainstream, government-approved internet that people can use to get around the system. than they would be if it weren't there at all. So what I would argue is that if Bitcoin is made mainstream, there's going to be all these regulations, but it may be possible to get around them. And if it's pervasive, then anarchists can still use it more than they would otherwise. So that's just something for consideration. I wonder what you think of that.
Okay, so let me repeat it back just a little bit. I mean, so you're saying it's a good thing that at least the technology exists even in a heavily regulated form than it not existing at all or not being available at all? Is that the gist?
Kind of, or at least I'm posing that question. I think to a certain extent that's true. Yes. Yeah. It's a matter of degrees maybe, but yeah.
Okay, so I guess to the comparison for cryptocurrencies would be like, even say with Bitcoin, like people are still a little more freer as long as they get the opportunity to use it, even if it's not being used in its most purest form, in its form of like perhaps getting rid of middlemen or the government entirely, things like this.
Sort of. What I'm saying is that maybe while the normies do that, the rest of us can find ways around the restrictions, because the system, I mean, so long as it stays in the form that it does, in such a decentralized form that no one is really in charge, the government can try to regulate it, and most people will fall under that, but some other people can work around.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, I think so. A couple things I guess I want to say on that. And they're very abstract notions of what you're saying, and I think it's a fair point for you to bring up. I'm not going to yell at you as much as I want to, but I don't think. I guess. A lot of the, living, speaking of the fact that we're here at PorcFest, okay, one of the, or we're at the Free State Project, we're with the Free State Project and all that. We're not with it, but, this is their shtick. And one of their big deals, Paige is like, no. But anyway, one of the big marketing slogans that'll be bantied around here is, liberty in our lifetime, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I think you can actually achieve that pretty much, right now. Like, I think with the technology that exists and all that, you can really do it. The thing is that A, you have to have the knowledge, B, you have to have the desire, to do it. And then I think you really can go do it. So I guess my point, my kind of anti-growth stance on a lot of this is that there are just people who, and I'm not saying that they're stupid, but there's just people that just will never have the desire for this sort of thing. Okay. There's people that'll just never, and they're never going to even want to take the time to learn, even if I think they could learn. Maybe some people, it'll always be over their head. So I think there's already, like, at its core, it's a niche. It's almost a niche by design. In fact, particularly with Bitcoin, Satoshi Nakamoto was saying when WikiLeaks wanted to start accepting it as a donation, he said, no. He says, we're not ready for this. Like, it won't get to that point. I kind of wonder how many people he expected to end up using Bitcoin, and like how much was he expecting things to scale so much?
You mean at the rate, or in general?
Maybe even in general.
I mean, I thought. Well, okay, I didn't read the white paper or any of his paper or any of his things or whatever.
I mean, I'm guessing, but go ahead.
I thought the whole point was to take down the banks. Like, I thought that was the end goal.
Yeah.
I think it was also just an experiment too.
Yeah.
That's just like
an
a
important
hacker,
perspective to have.
Open source project. There's plenty of those, and
sure. Whoops, it accidentally works.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I don't. I mean, and people are probably going to get mad at me for saying that, but yeah, I don't. Here's my thing: is that and this has always been my point, is that for the people that don't need technology that does what, like, blockchain, what Bitcoin, what Zcash does, whatever, they're just never going to use it. Mm-hmm. And so, like, why even? It's like making the greatest football in the world. Well, only football players are going to end up using it, right? I mean, It's not something for everybody else. So I guess I.
Well, I mean, if you're right, it would self-limit, but it's and on the other hand, if there is another use for it, how the hell would you stop it anyway? Like, how are you going to keep? Oh,
you can't. But then I like that because that's part of the reason I argue for open source so much, is that people can use it any way they want.
Okay.
Go ahead, Paige. What do you got?
Well, I have an argument, and at least in terms of Zcash.
Sure.
Like, if you compare the properties of private, like doing private things, internet transactions and whatnot, comparing that to Tor and how Tor specializes in anonymity and whatnot.
Yep.
They are very open about how the more people that use Tor, the better it is for everyone.
Yep.
Similarly with Zcash.
Sure,
so
right. It actually secures the network more.
Yeah. Well, it's secure, and there's just a larger anonymity set.
Right. Exactly.
So it is actually beneficial for the privacy of the system that more people use
that it grows as much as it possibly can.
Yep.
And there's no limit on that anonymity set, right?
Yep.
I mean, that number can get as big as whatever.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not necessarily the case for Bitcoin, but it's an interesting point.
Yeah. I mean, I think a side note, and this might speak to what you're talking about, Dan. I mean, if I haven't answered it to satisfaction, that's fine. You can say that. But so, I mean, these open source technologies, like, people can just copy Bitcoin. They already do. I mean, you have Litecoin, you have all these alternatives and everything, or like, something I've talked about recently on some Patreon shows. I know. I mean, like with Ethereum, when you hear that Microsoft is using Ethereum or this other company's using Ethereum or something like that, the reality check to put in play there is that they're not using like the Ethereum that everybody trades ETH in on Poloniex. Okay, they're using their own implementation of Ethereum.
Blockchain.
Yeah, it's an enterprise, right? It's an independent, totally independent like setup. So, those things will happen like kind of anyway. But I still want that. And this was talked about years and years ago with Bitcoin, that there needs to be 2 development teams. So that way, there can be this branching off of one development team has this ideology, the other development team has this ideology. This happened with blockchain.info years ago in the Bitcoin space, where you had 2 guys, they were kind of running things, and they split off. One of them went off to go found Coinbase, the other one went off to go found blockchain.info. They had 2 very different ideas of the direction perhaps that they wanted Bitcoin to go. So it's not a zero-sum game. So, and maybe I need to check myself on that, to make it known that it's not a zero-sum game. My main concern is that, I mean, especially now, like with the kind of Bitcoin civil war that's going on, and there might be that crazy soft fork happening on August 1st, that it's not being recognized for the ability to branch off and to have multiple different versions of this sort of thing, and that people aren't even on board with that. Because I think that would solve what you're talking about. That way, the people that, they can have their Chinese internet, and then we can have our Tor. You know what I mean? But people really seem very, very bent. And maybe the problem here with that is the monetary incentive. Like, they're so concerned that they're going to lose the value of what they want, when the value has always been, with blockchain technology, has always been the network. It's not it shouldn't be the cash value, even though I understand that that's why a lot of people get into it. So anyway, Paige, you got anything to say on a lot of that?
Well, that makes me think, like you're mentioning of having 2 different development teams for Bitcoin.
Yep.
I kind of just see that as what is being implemented in just having different cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, no, right. It sort of has happened, which is
Yeah.
why I get annoyed when people are Bitcoin maximalists. Is that what they
Yeah,
call it? It's
right.
like, are you kidding me? You monoculture? You're nuts. Dan, what do you got? You got anything?
Maybe what we should do is Bitcoin can be for the normies, and then we'll make anarchist coin that'll never go mainstream. Like, no company's going to. Right. They just call it something that it's not marketable.
Right. Sure. Yeah. There you go. Yeah, like death coin. Yeah. That would work. Or like eating babies coin. Yeah. No. Right. So your question's great. Dan, I appreciate that, and I appreciate the a little bit of pushback there. So, but this is something that. So let's take this back to Zcash here, because there is a deal that was made with JP Morgan. I mean, tell me about this. What's going on,
So
Paige?
everyone thinks that like all of a sudden JP Morgan
sold out.
endorsing Zcash or something like that, which is not true at all. They've been very clear about they did not want to be seen as endorsing Zcash.
Right.
But what happened is that we have a deal with their blockchain, small team, which is like 2 or 3 engineers, plus this woman Amber, who kind of runs that whole section. But
Okay.
they have their Quorum blockchain, which is an enterprise Ethereum thing.
Okay.
And they are very, like, their blockchain Quorum thing is focused, they've already focused on privacy. However, they couldn't do, with the way they were implementing the privacy, there are a few shortcomings that zero-knowledge proofs actually are able to solve. So what they did is hire us, the Zcash team, to develop zero-knowledge proofs into Quorum.
To implement it into that. But they're not taking on, like they're not connecting to the grander
No
Zcash
way. Hell no.
blockchain.
They would have no reason to do that. They would not have any reason for that.
Man, we got Ryan Taylor walking up. He has drinks, and maybe he's going to get on the mic, too, while he's at it. So anyway, we'll see.
I had enough to drink last night.
Yeah. Dan is done as far as drinks, and me, I'm a terrible teetotaler. What the hell am I doing at PorcFest? But anyway.
But yeah, I don't know. Like, JP Morgan is totally the devil, but
yeah. Wow.
Sometimes. So
Paige will not have a job on Monday morning.
I mean, nah, whatever.
Yeah.
Not wearing their hat.
But but this is the thing we were talking about, like with Ethereum and like say Microsoft or one of these other companies, where they're using Ethereum's technology, but they're not using their blockchain.
Yeah.
They're creating their own blockchain.
It's really like. It makes like the regulators and the banks feel more comfortable about Zcash as a whole, and it makes especially regulators realize that privacy and by extension anonymity is a good for business. Like businesses want that, so it's
Well, last time you were on the show, you brought that point up, and I hadn't even thought about it. That absolutely banks would want privacy.
Yeah.
They would want zero knowledge proofs.
Yeah.
And you can totally understand why.
Yeah.
Whether you agree with banks or not. So that's that's a great point to bring up, and that's what's happening. I think that's kind of the reality check that was needed, is for people to understand. It's like, look, no, Zcash isn't going to the banks. It's just the banks want to use zero knowledge proofs.
Yeah, they recognize that the technology is really useful, and it's advanced. It's like hasn't been implemented in a lot of places, so there's a lot of opportunities for it. And also, they recognize that the Zcash team is kind of like one of the only teams that can help them with that. Yeah. So
it, honestly, in a roundabout way, because as much as I hate banks and want to see them go the way of the dodo, I mean, it's really complimentary of just how great a programmers, how great a team you've got there. And I mean, that should almost be seen as like a, confidence boost.
Yeah, I agree.
In what's happening there, because you are who they went to.
Yep.
So, so I when I saw that news, I was like, no, hold on. Let's relax here. Like, no one's going to the banks. It's nothing like that. Yeah. So, okay. Anything else interesting going on in Zcash land? I mean, it's been I don't know. Maybe a month ago you were on, so I guess it would be.
Hasn't been too long. We are, we're working on those feature improvements. Starting to talk more about the sapling crypto upgrade, which is going to be a hard fork. So, that's, I guess, controversial, but we, from the start, have said we are not afraid of hard forks. So
right. I think that's a great position for any crypto to get into, because that's one of the huge issues with Bitcoin. Yeah, it's like, oh no, this shouldn't be changing.
All this
blah
whole
blah blah.
SegWit stuff. Like could have told all the.
Just said from the beginning, we're going to do hard forks. Yeah.
Just everyone be ready. Like whatever.
Yeah.
So we Zcash kind of positions themselves. Maybe I mentioned this before. In between Bitcoin development and Ethereum development. So like. I don't know.
Your style is in between those two.
Yeah, like in terms of how quickly we're progressing and how like conservative we're going to be.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a great attitude. So, and we do have Ryan Taylor here. Yes. You open to speaking at all on mic? You good for that?
Yeah, sure. What's
up? Right on. So, I mean, what do you were patrons, Sovereign Tech patrons. I keep saying that, folks. Just become a fucking patron already, okay? But I released myself, Paige, we were all on them, and you were like a last minute, number one draft pick, in my opinion. That we were asked to do a mesh networking talk at what chalks up to Alt Expo here at PorcFest. And it was a fantastic time. You were talking about, you were at Battle Mesh. I mean, you're knee deep in a lot of the decentralization, a lot of the peer-to-peer revolution, and all the stuff that's going on. You mentioned, I want you to bring this up here on the main show so people can hear about it, maybe get in on it. You mentioned a new firmware software that you can put on routers. Was this LibreMesh? That is all about really configuring, I'm guessing some of these more maybe the older Linksys type routers. I know those are really good for this sort of
Right.
thing,
Yeah.
where you can install the software on there and you can start setting up mesh networks. Like, give me the 411 on that. Is that the lingo that people use? I don't know.
Yeah. It's the idea is to get configuration down to as little as possible, because when you have to start messing with config files, then people won't do it, and when you
Right.
try, it just becomes too much of a headache. You could spend all day and then make no progress.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so LibreMesh is an attempt to try to simplify that process
Okay.
by doing a zero configuration. Paige and I actually went to Internet Freedom Festival in Valencia, and this is where I first saw LibreMesh in action. They had a workshop. They had brought 5 routers. They split 30 people up into 5 different groups, gave us each a router and the website, which was libremesh.org, I believe.
Okay.
And they just said you should be able to figure it out. This is like they were testing us and themselves at the same time to make sure their documentation was good and that the zero configuration stuff would work.
Yeah.
And I think it was probably 20 minutes. All 5 of the routers were up or something.
Inside of 20 minutes, all 5
Yeah,
routers,
maybe
these
30
teams,
minutes.
they
But
were
these
up
teams
and
all
running.
had all their stuff going, and I think Paige even set up an extra one.
Wow.
You had a little small router too that you were playing with.
I don't remember. This was
Okay.
like a year and a half ago.
Oh, this is some time ago. Okay, all right, fair enough. So, but
and then
cool.
that team is now working on Libre Router, which is kind of the next level of that, which will be the open source hardware router that they'll be making, which also has an option to do the TV white. There's a module to do TV white space networking.
Okay,
And
so explain that for the listeners.
Right.
TV white space networking.
So there are old television frequencies that are no longer used.
Yep.
And some governments have said that that those are now usable by the general public. To do
Okay,
whatever
they've
they
opened them
want.
up, sure.
They've opened
Yep.
them up. And I think Germany actually went back on that, and they said you can use it, now you can't. But yeah, so it's jurisdictions, you know what they do. But yeah, so the idea is that they opened up these really low frequency bandwidths, and you can send data very long distances through trees, through walls, through dirty screens and windows and whatnot.
The same frequencies that TVs were using for decades.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So it's not super fast, but it is effective.
Yeah, right. I mean, and it's pervasive, which is really important for mesh networking,
Right.
which is great.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's really interesting.
So you can
that's going
attach
down.
that to the Libre router as well, and then there's a solar power module also.
To power the whole thing.
power
I
the
mean,
whole
just to
thing.
like really make it like really decentralized, right? Like
Yeah.
we're not going to connect to shit, and then everybody's just going to connect to what you've got.
Yeah.
Okay, wow. So that's really interesting. We don't need to do like a rehash of the whole talk that we gave, but I thought it'd be good to know. I mean, that really. I know one of the big hopes that a lot of my listeners were on board with, and development is, going slower than I think a lot of people expected, and I plan on talking to the developers actually at some point here, but like a lot of people are hoping for MadeSafe to really help out with the whole mesh networking thing and everything.
Yeah.
But there's other projects going on. You're talking about Libre Router, Libre Mesh, and all this, things that are being designed for, really, it sounds like everybody can just go ahead and install and make it happen as long as they buy the right hardware.
Yeah.
And I know the hardware is kind of a challenge, though. It seems like, as far as I can tell, I mean, what would you say if you can remember? Because this event was a little while ago. I mean, like, what was the average hardware being used? Was it like the Linksys type routers, like the good old blue and grays?
TP links or did
Or
they have
TP
Ubiquity?
links.
I think they were TP links.
There were some TP
which
links,
is what I
okay.
typically
And Ubiquity.
see.
Ubiquity is
Yeah.
very popular because
Right.
they're inexpensive and like
Yeah,
have a
weren't
ton
they
of
Ubiquity?
bands.
I don't remember. If
Yeah.
Either way.
Just
Either way,
curious.
I see a lot of
I
TP
see
links
both.
at these different mesh events.
Okay.
And Linksys less so.
Sure.
Never see Netgear.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no. I never see those out of like a business,
Yeah.
some big corporate headquarters anyway. Yeah.
Alpha Networks makes some pretty interesting stuff, and I met the guy, one of the guys from Alpha Networks. His name is Ken. He was traveling from Japan. He lives over there.
Sure.
I was filming, and he turns around and asks me my handle on YouTube, and I tell him, and he told me that I'm the only reason he uses YouTube is for my
Fuck
live
yeah.
videos. So I'm like, all right, how are you? What's your name?
That's awesome. No, you are a great videographer. I will say that. In fact, I think I wrote a story once because people keep asking me like, what do you actually even watch on YouTube? And I think I shared like 3 or 4 channels. Yours was one of the channels that I
saw
recommend.
that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
all right. You
because
caught
made
that.
a comment at the end about like fuck TED Talks. This is what you should be watching.
Yes, that's exactly what I said. Right on. Yeah. Yeah, so you're definitely actually, just let people know it's ADJY leak, right?
Yep.
AJ leak or
Agi leak.
Agi leak.
Yeah, Agi is a word that isn't in the dictionary, but I found it in the thesaurus.
Okay.
Right next to like anarchist, troublemaker, rabble rouser.
Really? Like that's an actual word?
Yeah, Agi.
Oh, that's
the
fucking
Agi
awesome.
part is. Yeah, and
yeah,
then
okay.
the leak is, most people think that leak is like a WikiLeaks reference or something,
yeah.
but it's actually from Kurt Vonnegut. The main character in Breakfast of Champions refers to mirrors as leaks into alternate realities, and he warns children that if you walk too close to the mirror, you'll fall into this alternate reality.
Very clever.
I kind of see that as what I'm doing with my live stream.
Very clever.
Broadcasting this alternate reality.
Sure.
Step into if they want.
Sure. Okay. No, I like it. Well, and that's also your handle on Twitter, so people can find you there. Not to say that you're done. Just saying we've been recording for an hour, so if anyone wants to, shimmy off, or if they want to continue, they're more than welcome to. And we got is it Krillin, right? Kirill. I call you Krillin. You know why? Because anyway, so we got somebody. This is a guy who I've actually seen. Boy, it was in Las Vegas a couple of years ago. Yeah. Saw you at a conference, and Dan's going to head off. So yeah, rock and roll. Yeah, I mean, such classy dressers around here, I tell you. Anyway, and of course, Paige is in triple black. Actually, Kirill, right? Did I get it right that time? Okay. So I keep saying Krillin because, like, do you watch Dragon Ball Z?
Yeah. I've had that since 4th grade.
Yeah, you know. If you just had the little 4 dots on your head, it'd be all over.
Yeah, the self-fulfilling prophecy of losing all my hair to work out.
Right on, because there's a character named Krillin. Anyway, so Krill, all right. So just doing a little recording of my show, Sovryn Tech, and so whoever's like kind of walking by, I'm just letting them jump on and everything, and right into that little microphone. And so what do you got going on? So is this your first PorcFest?
Yes.
It is your first PorcFest. Okay, but like I said, I saw you in Las Vegas at a Bitcoin blockchain conference, and you were actually on a panel about altcoins, also with Devin Reed at the time of Alexandria, which of course Ryan Taylor here knows a whole hell of a lot about Alexandria, a technology that honestly I feel terrible because I know I'm tailor-made for this. And no reference, no pun to Ryan Taylor. and I never got around to taking advantage of it. And I keep saying, it's like, I'm going to do this, and then whatever shit happens. Anyway, but I want to change that. So, but you have some familiarity with Alexandria as well. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I was part of the company a few years ago.
Yeah, right on. So if you can actually briefly, tell me about Alexandria, because this is still going on, right? Alexandria is still a thing. It still is legit. Yeah. Okay. So give me a rundown.
Sure. The way I look at it, and I'm not an official part of the company, so please tell me when I'm off key or off message.
Yeah.
I see it as sort of a decentralized mix between Pirate Bay and YouTube in a sense.
Sure.
So imagine you can go on Pirate Bay and live stream the videos right there. Mm-hmm. I guess sort of like Popcorn Time, but they're very focused on making sure there's a very robust DRM system involved as well.
Okay.
So it's really interesting because if you look at the economics of YouTube and all of these other content distribution platforms, they're really screwing over a lot of their content creators.
Oh, absolutely. Like, they just keep changing the rules. I mean, what Google giveth, Google taketh away. It's
exactly.
a fact. Yeah.
And there's a big trend, and not just Alexandria, but there's a lot of platforms. If you look at Patreon, that's the biggest one I can think of. Twitch is starting to follow with tips and subscriptions.
Sure. Oh, boy. Well, I got to cut you off for a second. She found me. So I'm actually recording Sovryn Tech right now, and there's royalty walking by. In my opinion, in the crypto space, absolute royalty. That being Lyn Ulbricht. So we got the microphone here.
Oh, good.
Krillin, if you don't mind, or Krill, sorry. I call you Krillin. I keep thinking Dragon Ball Z, but Krill, if you don't mind, I mean, I'd love to talk to...
Not a
because
question.
Because I know so much about Bitcoin. I'm an expert, so ask me anything.
Yeah, right. So
it's genetic, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. So Lyn Ulbricht, of course, I think that name goes... or who you are goes without saying, certainly to my audience. But you are the mother of Ross Ulbricht, of course, who is right now going through the whole Silk Road trial is just I'll say it, because I say things plainly on the show. It's such a clusterfuck. And you have been, you go to all kinds of conferences. You're going all around the world talking about things. And this isn't your first PorcFest. This is what, your second?
Fourth.
Wow.
Yeah, and
okay.
Ross has been in a cage the whole time. That's what struck me. It seems so long ago that I was here, and he's been in that same confinement, very
limited confinement for that long.
I'm sure you get asked this all the time, but I mean, if you could give like an update as to what's going on. I know there's I mean, what is it now? It's like a double life sentence. I mean, give me the breakdown. It's madness.
Basically, we were hoping for at least a resentencing with a different judge because so many people thought the sentencing was just barbaric.
Sure.
And it's all nonviolent charges, by the way, and this murder for hire thing. The government never bothered to bring that to court and prove it in front of a jury. Ross, of course, wouldn't have had a chance to defend himself against it. He's vehemently, to me, denied it and said there's no way. Mm-hmm. It's totally against his philosophy. And in any case, they never charged him with it at trial, and yet they've used this to justify this double life sentence plus 40 years without parole because the federal, it's a death sentence.
Yeah.
That's what they've given him, a slow death sentence. And the appellate court of the Second Circuit upheld it. And I was really hoping they wouldn't, but they did. And so...
I mean, I know the memes and the comparisons have been all around the internet as far as like, just you bring up the names of tyrants of these like just genuinely... Like, nobody would argue about it. Like, horrendous figures that are alive today in prison and all this stuff, and they're not getting as harsh a sentence
Charles
as
Manson.
Ross is. Yeah,
Charles
right.
Manson.
Oh, yeah, that's the
he
one.
Comes up for parole every once in a while because he's in the state
tweet.
system. But during the 80s and the drug war, they took parole out of the federal system, which I really want to work to bring back. That is so wrong.
Sure.
There are 17,000 people charged with nonviolent crimes serving life in our prisons right now. Nonviolent. They haven't physically harmed.
Yeah.
They're not a threat to anyone.
Right.
And they're serving life. 17,000. When I was growing up, it was really a big deal if someone got life. That was like, whoa, that was
it was major
lot.
news, right?
Yeah,
sure.
And now it's common, it's casual, it's just metastasized, and it's actually quintupled only since the 80s. And it's sick.
Yeah, the prison
scary.
system's insane. Yeah. I mean, today.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly, and I would even argue that even with the worst of figures, I mean, the prison system does nothing to really do restorative justice,
right,
which I think is what's needed really in the world. And it's just maddening. But certainly, the case with Ross brings it all to light. Unbelievable. I mean, what other news? I mean, what's going on right now?
Yeah, well, so the only other thing, so we'll repeal the appeal. That's what you do. You go through the system, you appeal the appeal.
Sure.
Which is basically a motion to rehear it before the entire Second Circuit, 12 or 13 of them. The Second Circuit's known for not doing that.
Yeah.
They rarely do it. It's like winning the $1 million lottery or something. They do it sometimes, but it's rare. And so we're not counting on it, but we're trying for it. And then after that, there's the Supreme Court.
Yeah, and that's the deal.
And that's the next thing.
Yeah, I want to get out a big thank you to you and I. We worked, I did nothing compared to what everybody else is doing, but we worked together on the Free Ross-a-thon.
We certainly did a lot. Absolutely did.
I appreciate that. But I know a lot of Sovryn Tech listeners were certainly on board with that and did what they could to help out. That was a great event. That's been helping fund all of the actions.
It will be funding this effort in the Supreme Court.
Sure, absolutely.
Directly.
Yeah. So
everybody if you know that anything you gave, it's going right to that.
Yeah. Directly. So I guess if you could let listeners know, I've got an audience, a few thousand people. What can these people do? There's a lot of people out there. What can they do right now to help out with Ross, to help out with the case, everything?
Yeah, well, there's this narrative that Ross is this violent kingpin thug, and it's based on...
Oh, that book.
Oh, the book is
Nick
there.
Bilton, right?
Yeah,
American
which
Kingpin.
I've been told by someone I completely trust, who's never led me wrong, who knows that the government gave him material pre-trial. He had all their material way before trial that he's basing this book on, and there's a movie. I mean, it's basically a pitch for a movie.
Sure.
And it's... even the excerpts I've read, I'm like, well, that's not true, because I know personally that's not true. So there's all this distortion, and anyway. He doesn't even mention that it was appealed or why or anything. It's just, it fits a very simple little, very sellable narrative that, make a great movie for the general public.
Which is being made into one. I think they were talking...
I heard it might be stalled, I hope so.
Okay, yeah, because the last I heard that it was going to be like Jared Leto playing Ross.
Yeah, I don't know,
whatever.
maybe I heard that too.
Yeah,
I don't know, might be, whatever.
Regardless, it's ridiculous.
The whole thing is like, I can't believe this.
Yeah.
But yeah, it might be. But there's that. But there's this, this smear campaign.
Yeah.
And then the appellate court relied on this murder for hire to justify and enhance this life sentence. It was never brought to trial. And Brian Dougherty of Reason goes, well, why do we even have trials?
Yeah, right.
If you can just say that someone did something and use it to put him away for life, why? And that is what's happening in our country.
Yeah.
Is that slowly, or maybe not so slowly, people aren't going to trial. They're pressured to plea. Yeah. 97% of people plea, and often to things they didn't do because they're told, if you go to trial, you will lose and you will be punished more harshly. So they go, okay, fine, I'll plea.
Yeah, I mean, it's turned into what historically were known as like...
prosecutors run it.
Yeah, I mean, it's drumhead trials, what they used to call them in the 18th and 19th century, where literally at the head of a drum, your head was on the line, and it was just a very instantaneous call. I mean, and it's really what it's becoming. You're absolutely right about that.
It's a dying institution. The trial by jury is certainly by your peers.
Sure,
that's a joke.
Sure,
but,
yeah, that's not happening.
Even so, most people don't go to trial.
Yeah.
So prosecutors run the show, and they pressure people and threaten people.
Right.
And you pay a tax. You pay what's called a trial tax if you try to defend yourself at trial.
Yeah, as I call it often on the show, it's an injustice system. It's not the justice system. So.
And people should pay attention because this is something that every totalitarian state does. Mm-hmm. They have show trials, and it's meaningless. And this is the United States. We're supposed to be the land of the free, and it's like, please. They are hijacking that. It's been hijacked, and our constitutional protections are just being, especially the Fourth Amendment, but other ones, there's a First Amendment issue too.
Just disappearing.
Yeah. They're meaningless.
Yeah, so people can go to freeross.org, right?
Right.
Yeah, but what else? What else can they do?
Well, we have the initial phase is paid for. If we go to the Supreme Court or going forward, it's more money, So there's that. There's the money. There's a tax deductible option. There's different things on the site.
Sure.
But also, social media,
just
spreading
speaking
the
out.
word, speaking out, saying, and even on articles and in, comments and this narrative, people go, oh yeah, well he was convicted of murder. Well, he wasn't convicted of anything to do with murder, but it was never murder. There was no one murdered.
Right.
And actually, a murder for hire charge when there's no murder is 10 years. So it's kind of like, hello.
So he's even getting, even by that standard, it's outrageous what he's getting.
Even if he did it, which he didn't, so it's like.
And if this is something we can talk about, I'll certainly edit it out. But Coinbase recently, they shut down FreeRoss, or
they disabled the account.
Yeah, and I mean, and this was at a point where you were really, some of these funds that we're talking about were going to need to be used, correct?
Right, we were converting it to dollars because the lawyers were taking Bitcoin right now.
Yeah,
I'm working on one of them, the other, anyway.
One day we'll get to that. So, but it seemed like, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, inside of like 24 hours, because of people on social media, less than that, people on social media saying, Coinbase, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
Like Coinbase, what happened? They turned around. I mean, how'd that go?
Yeah, it was, everybody was complaining about Coinbase that day.
Sure.
It was all
because it was actually, the site was going down.
Everything was a problem. And my husband, Kirk, he's like, God, they just disabled our account, no explanation. And we had converted money before. So anyway, I said, well, he said, I think they're singling us out. And I said, oh, no, I don't think so, whatever. But then I thought, well, I'll just tweet it with everybody else.
Right.
And suddenly, there's this huge outcry. I was like, is this little tweet? And it became this major deal with journalists calling me and people all over the thing. And they've disabled FreeRoss account and all this stuff.
Yeah.
I was amazed. I really didn't expect it.
Yeah, Twitter, Facebook, everybody was popping.
Which was kind of heartening, really. I got a lot of new followers, too. It was cool.
Yeah, right on.
But anyway, by midnight that night, they had written me a personal, this is how you get customer service, apparently.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, that was amazing because I heard you got an email from Coinbase. I was like, what the hell? How do you get an email from Coinbase?
Dear Lyn, and we're so sorry. This is and they said it was because there were security concerns because we had been hacked, as you very well know, Brian.
Yes.
Previously, but it wasn't that account. But they said it had been linked. But the thing is, they'd already converted money before, just as much.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit weird, but okay. Look, they brought it back and they did it fast. But not everybody has the option to have a Twitter shitstorm.
Yeah, to have a Twitter army effectively come out of nowhere. Yeah.
To say,
So but that's something that can be done, that people can do, is that they can get on social media and just like make companies aware,
follow us, like our Facebook community page.
Yeah.
And I just want to put a plug in for, I don't know if this is a group that meditates much, but Ross has been meditating.
I am a huge supporter of meditation.
Okay, well,
I talk about it all the time.
Okay, well, someone sent him a book called The Mind Illuminated a year ago, and he's been meditating every day. they lock him up every day for a head count, and so he uses the time to meditate, and it's really helped him. It's really helped him get through this. And so it'll be a year on June 28th, which is coming right up.
Bravo.
And we have an event on our free Ross thing, Meditate with Ross, that day. And he wrote a letter about it. Please meditate with me, or pray, or visualize me free, or whatever it is. Just let's all kind of focus on that, just as a community. And so we're inviting people to do that with us.
Yeah, I'll definitely be a part of that.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. I call it zero tasking. That's what I call meditation, and
it's good
I do
for
it all the
you,
time. It is.
So,
it really is.
yeah.
Every morning I do it myself. So I think that's fantastic. That is a wonderful idea. What a great idea, actually. Now that I'm thinking about it.
And it's Ross's idea. It's like, well, I'd love it. Everybody did it with me one day. For that anniversary. And it's really made a difference for him. He said, for 1 hour a day, I'm in heaven. It's like I can really, and then he's less stressed for the rest of the time. But it's tough in there. It's tough.
Sure.
And then he was doing, this is kind of funny, but he was doing walking meditation where you just kind of walk and you can concentrate. And they go, Ross is suicidal. I think Ross is suicidal. Look how he's walking. This is bad. And he was doing walking meditation.
But he was just meditating. Yeah.
But actually, one of the prison staff. He did a they'd have Toastmasters there, and he did a presentation on meditation.
Yeah.
And afterwards he said, I'm going to try meditating, Ross. I may want to try what you're doing.
Yeah.
So that was cool.
And that's an amazing thing. I mean, what an amazing guy as far as like his attitude, as I understand it, has been fantastic.
It has.
In this
and
really.
it keeps me going, because I feel so much better when I see Ross. It's like he lifts me up.
Yeah. Well, I think he's, amazingly, I think he's lifting up a lot of people.
Yeah.
And certainly a lot of people are always thinking about him, and definitely get on board with the meditation thing.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
So anyway, Lyn, thank you so much for being on. That was a total surprise. I actually like doing this out in the open because people could just walk by and boom, there they are. They're on the mic. So that was fantastic. And of course, everybody go to freeross.org. And again, just an honor, and thank you for everything that you're doing. It's really doing, even beyond, it's doing so much for so many people beyond Ross, but certainly with Ross.
That's our intention.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much. I think you've got another interview to catch. So
I just want to say something.
Yeah, please.
You have been such a good friend and so generous with your time and advice and expertise, and always so patient with me, because sometimes I'm freaking out, and you're just very calm, but also so helpful and generous, and I just really am grateful. I really am.
You honor me, Lyn. Thank you.
That really
means I'm happy to do it anytime, especially with something so important, and you're just a fantastic human being. I mean, straight up. So I love helping good people.
We just love each other.
Yeah, it's a big love fest here at PorcFest. So Anyway, Lyn. So thank you so much. Those words mean a lot. So thank you.
Absolutely, I mean them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Boy, after that great surprise. I mean, just tremendous. Really, I've been wanting to have Lyn on for some time and really talk about the case, and even at deeper levels and more than I have. I've certainly had varying thoughts on the whole situation, but maybe we'll have Lyn on again.
It's such a quickly changing narrative.
It is.
So,
it really is.
Like, every time I see her, I feel like there's something crazy new happened with the whole thing.
She can give new speeches like probably once a month because there's so much that's going on.
Yeah.
And it's also relevant. It really is relevant, to everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, regardless of what all went down, it really is relevant to everybody. So just amazing to hear from her anytime, and she's really an inspiration. She's kind of like, she's one of those people where like you feel like she's everybody's mom. You know what I mean? And she's so cool. And she had great. I was really honored by what she had to say. I've worked with her on varying things. Certainly, there's been issues, and I'm kind of. They'll call me up, hey, we think this is happening, give us the breakdown. And I'm glad she just has a great community, not talking about me even, just a great community to always help her out. So anyway, we were talking previously to Kroll of, we were talking about Alexandria, which is pretty much, and we can move on to other things, because I want to let people know.
How do you top that?
Yeah, I mean, how do you top that? You're following a tough act, no doubt about it. Maybe I can make some magic happening in editing or whatever.
Yeah.
But certainly... we were talking about Alexandria, which is kind of, I mean, in the really basic version of that is that it's trying to be a decentralized sort of media hub. I mean, is that fair?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because you can put podcasts on there. You can put. I mean, it's being used for all kinds of things, right? Like, weren't you storing tweets with it and everything?
We started with tweets originally, and what ended up happening was we had a bunch of archives of tweets, except for the pictures and the videos that people were tweeting weren't getting archived and distributed.
Right.
And so then we shifted our focus to the actual media distribution.
Right.
And we were working with BitTorrent, the BitTorrent mainline DHT, to get streaming working.
Okay.
And as soon as we got that working, we found out about IPFS, switched over to that.
Yep.
But now, you can publish PDFs, images, podcasts, any kind of audio file, any video file.
Even video.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's stored on the blockchain. It's not going anywhere.
It's stored on the metadata is all on the blockchain, so you can always search for it and find it, and nothing's encrypted on that level, so it's all human readable. And then the hash to whatever DHT is also on there. So if the files are stored on IPFS, it will say IPFS and have a hash. And in the future, you can use other DHTs as well.
Yeah, see, Sovryn Tech's got to be on that. I mean, what do you think of it, Paige? What do you think of that project?
Well, I'm actually curious how you find working with IPFS. Is it reliable?
Well, I wasn't going to say anything about IPFS. I'm still a little burned about the fact that they went with Ethereum instead of, because weren't they originally going to do IPFS on Bitcoin?
Filecoin.
Filecoin.
That's still in the works.
Okay, that's still happening. All right, anyway.
Still in the works, and they abandoned the project a couple of years back, and then they came out recently saying they were going to do it on Ethereum.
Yeah.
And they were saying the whole time that they were just looking for an implementation, and Alexandria is standing over there going, oh, pick us. And that didn't happen though.
Okay, all right. So to answer Paige's question, like, how do you feel about IPFS? And Kroll, certainly, if you have any thoughts on this, I mean, you're welcome to jump in as well. Go for it.
Yeah, I personally like it. I mean, I use it. One thing I really like is the web gateways, the web portals that you can do. And so, like, with Alexandria, we have 3 IPFS nodes set up that can pin anything that gets published to Alexandria gets pinned on those nodes. It's like seeding on the BitTorrent network.
Sure.
So it gets shared on all of those nodes, and they can be accessed through ipfs.alexandria.io/the hash.
Okay.
And so you don't need to be running IPFS locally on your machine in order to access it through the web. A personal use case that I use IPFS for that I really like is I travel around a lot. I take lots of photos, and I like to share my photos with my friends, but I didn't want to send all of my friends or my audience to some random website. I didn't want anyone to have to create accounts.
Right.
And I didn't want JavaScript all over the place tracking all of my people.
Sure.
So what I ended up doing was using Adobe Bridge to just make a static HTML gallery of 40 pictures.
Okay.
And then I put that whole folder onto IPFS and then access it through one of the web gateways, and then it gets cached on the web gateway.
Okay.
So then I just send that link.
So you're making very practical use of this.
Yeah.
I mean, like that's the. I mean, Paige is looking like she's like, I don't know.
Well,
when I do it that way, it is temporary, because now if you try to look at pictures that I took 2 years ago, those links aren't going to work anymore because they're only cached on the nodes. They aren't actually pinned there because I didn't publish them to Alexandria. We built a piece that will actually pin all of the files.
What do you got, Paige? And then I want to get to Kroll.
Yeah, I guess I just heard maybe it's better nowadays, but I've heard that it's just not reliable. It's not a reliable network. Like you store your data and then it's gone.
Well, it's typical with DHTs, unless you have some mechanism like what MadeSafe is doing with the sharding and
the sharding.
No.
Sorry.
Well, MadeSafe is also like not existing yet, so that's
Alexandria is trying to solve that problem for IPFS.
Okay.
But IPFS, as far as I know, is not trying to solve it themselves.
Okay.
Kroll, what do you got? Anything on IPFS? What do you think? You're in this space. You're knee deep in this space. I know that. So what do you think?
I mean, as someone who's not coming from the technical perspective, I've met some people on their team who are absolutely brilliant. Great conversations with them.
Oh, I think it's important to follow the attitude and the brilliance of the place.
100%. In terms of, I guess, broader Alexandria, I've been following the project for, since I guess it started. But there's some really interesting stuff going on. I mean, just purely from the user perspective, you have the ability to pretty much tip a content creator on Twitter, Facebook, wherever you want, and that's just it's powerful stuff.
Sure. I think that's something like yours.network, a lot of that kind of this micropayment and paying for content, and all that, and in whatever way can be done. I think that's very important. I think that's going to be like really. I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, Kroll. Like the the Brave browser, where they recently did their BAT, the basic attention token, which I mean, I'll just say it straight. Like I think it's one of the worst ideas I've ever heard in my life. But I do like the concept of people getting paid for for what they put out there. I think that because certainly the advertising model, putting ads on websites and all this different bullshit, is just that. It's bullshit. Like, I mean, if anything, it helps spread malware. I mean, it makes everything less secure, in my opinion. And there's a whole slew of problems, to go along with that. So I think that's pretty cool. People can get paid for tweeting. Fuck yeah. I think that's great. So you're generally favorable what you see going on with IPFS.
Yeah, and generally the whole concept of I guess, how advertising works. People within the crypto space have been trying to come up with newer ideas for years now. I forgot a couple years ago there was some sort of plugin that replaced advertisements with small contributions of proof of work.
Oh, okay.
So
that's clever.
of seeing an ad, you would just submit a few hashes to some pool or something like that, and they were thinking about this as a viable model towards sort of replacing traditional advertising.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay.
So the whole concept, I think, is changing very quickly. I mean,
a lot of experimentation has to happen in that space, no doubt about that.
Even in broader media, you don't really have commercials as much. It's It's content that's sort of within the show. People wearing specific clothes.
Yeah,
suddenly
kind of native
you see the Ford
advertising.
Fusion drive by, slow motion.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember. There's this movie. Probably nobody remembers it except for me, just because I have one of those brains. It came out in the '90s. It was called Bloodwork with Clint Eastwood. Don't bother watching it. Never ever watch it. Okay. I went to theaters to see it because at the time, young man, that was what I did every weekend. I went to the theater, and like he's on his boat. Clint Eastwood's on his boat, and then suddenly, like, there's just this hat right there, right on the deck of his boat that says Wendy's. And now I saw it because at the time, as a teenager, I wore that hat myself because I worked there, and it was like, but it just stuck out, for me. But I was like, why the fuck would somebody that has like a veritable yacht have a Wendy's hat on his fucking deck? Like that was so weird, especially a modern one. I mean, it was total native advertising. It's obviously what it was, and certainly, you're right. That's largely what's going on, and largely what is being found to be somewhat successful. Mm-hmm. Successful as in not that it's ethical. Successful as in it's what gets people paid.
Yeah.
So, anyway. Yeah, that's something where there's a lot of experimentation going on. Obviously, Patreon has been a tremendous success. We've recently learned about that by the numbers. So what are you working on right now? What do you got going on? I mean, you're like I said, you're a man in the space. What's happening? What do you got going on?
So most recently, I was running a consulting firm, so helping startups, financial institutions understand what blockchain is, how it affects their value chain, what are the different revenue and cost opportunities. But more recently, I'm actually planning to launch a digital currency hedge fund. So I have an extremely experienced partner. My background is financial services at my CFA. I've been following this space from a finance perspective for more than the last 4 years.
Right.
Written on the subject. The panel originally that...
Yeah, the altcoin panel, right?
Yeah.
A lot of that came up on that.
Exactly, and I think the time is right. I think there's a lot of pent-up institutional demand for this type of asset class, and with the right team and infrastructure, I mean, it's off to the races.
Okay, yeah, so you got things going on, and I agree. Like certainly that. I mean, it's an interesting thing. So, because in one sense, the cryptocurrency space is allowing for a lot of financial tools to really get out to the masses for once.
Yeah.
And that's an exciting thing in a lot of ways. Certainly, I have issues. In fact, Paige might want to chime in on this. Like a lot of the ICOs that have been going on and everything. I mean, some of them feel, and if you disagree, you can tell me. Like some of them feel so scammy. I mean, and some of them just straight up are. And how they come up.
Yeah.
But it's it's a fact that. Financial tools are being opened up to people that they were never available for. And I think, largely that's an okay trend. And for people to be developing it, people like you, Kirill, to be working on it and whatever, I think that's fantastic to kind of be bringing that to the fore. But how do you feel about all these ICOs? If you don't want to comment on it, just say the word and it's no problem.
I mean, it's a mixed bag. It's an entirely new way of thinking about business models and distribution for assets and things like that. But at the same time, I am cognizant and I respect the fact that there are very robust rules and regulations about issuing securities, which may or may not be met by a large portion of these ICOs.
Right.
And a lot of this is around consumer protection, so making sure your grandparents don't mortgage their house to get into an ICO that they don't know about. I mean, my entire background is doing research and due diligence on different ideas and assets and companies.
Right.
So it's literally what I do.
Right.
But
I mean,
random farmers or software engineers, it's not. There's a distinct difference between sophisticated accredited investors and sort of the masses. A lot of which is their ability to invest in high-risk projects, which could absolutely wipe out and return zero.
Sure, I mean, there's reputations at stake here. I mean, no doubt about that. And, I've heard people make the claim, that, and I haven't heard this directly, but I mean, I've heard people make the claim that, like, pretty much VCs now, right, which ICOs could effectively replace VCs. I'm sure Paige will say something about that. But VCs are telling companies, no, just go do an ICO. We're not giving you any money. And that's becoming a very popular phrase, kind of in Silicon Valley and all that. I mean, is that accurate, or how do you feel about that?
I've heard that a few times.
Okay.
And I think it's very easy for the VC to say because they're not the ones violating securities rules.
Yeah, their neck's not on the line.
So they don't have to sign a check, and their portfolio company gets pretty much free money for no equity.
Sure.
So that kind of tells you a little bit about the VC that's sort of trying to push you to do that.
Yeah.
I would not recommend that as a route to sort of avoid doing a Series B or something like that.
Yeah, some kind of seed round, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you also have to think of it as sort of there's a bit of a bias here. When I was first initially very skeptical about ICOs, I thought to myself that for a lot of these projects, it's a way to get funding when traditional VCs and investors weren't interested.
Right.
And the fact that they aren't interested also tells you a lot. And it's pretty common in the VC space as well. If you're sort of doing your roadshow, these companies, everyone knows each other. They'll share their notes.
Yeah.
So if someone starts saying no, they'll tell everyone else why they said no, and suddenly you have a cascading effect.
Sure.
But if you're sort of offering it to the public, it's an entirely different marketing dynamic. You're not offering equity in most cases with this, so it's a mixed bag. It's interesting, and there's a lot of opportunity, but I think people will be burned at some point.
Okay,
it's scary.
Sure. So, I mean, Paige, what do you think about all this?
Well, so just to be clear, in the instances where there probably is violations is where the ICOs, the tokens, aren't being used for any application other than raising money, right? So if these ICOs, if the tokens that are being sold are actually used within to like participate in the system or the whatever it be, like the basic attention token being a good example, like you're actually using the token that you buy. It's
right.
You're not. It isn't equity. You're just getting early access, basically, to this functionality.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a key point people should understand. Like they should, especially if you're interested in like this ICO thing.
So you're saying that a safer bet on an ICO is if the coin that you're getting is something that actually has utility. It's not just like a promissory note of some kind.
Well, I think that's a start.
Okay. Yep.
Like in the end, you still don't know if like you're going to be able to use it in the system.
All
like
risk.
If they didn't
absolutely.
build it yet, then there's still that risk.
and then there's the question of whether or not you're able to sort of play that off as a usable use case token.
Sure, right.
Sure. I think maybe the best example is basic attention token because they are a legitimate business already.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reputation and names there, sure.
Like, they're not just gonna, like, they probably wouldn't have risked the whole Brave business just to, like, make a bunch of money.
So, so you're feeling a little more confident. I mean, let's be clear. Like,
I don't know if it's the best, I don't know if it's the right way to go, but...
But you think it's something that's actually going to exist? It's going to be in fruition?
Yeah, I think they're at least going to give it try really hard.
Right, which is fine with me. Like, if they want to try, go ahead and try.
Yeah.
I mean, it was amazing. What was it? May 31st, I think, that they did their sale.
Yeah.
And, like, in 30 seconds, they made $36 million. I mean, I think it holds some kind of record somewhere.
Well, then there was that other one that happened more recently.
Bancor, Status.
Okay.
Each raising 9 figures.
But Bancor was kind of, like, seen as this actual scam, right? I don't know. I'm
Kroll's like kind of holding back. He's like, I don't know.
I've seen some posts that came out while I was at
too.
PorcFest, and I'm just like, I don't have time to do this while I'm here. I'd rather enjoy nature.
So what do you see as like the viability of ICOs? What do you see the future of ICOs?
Okay,
being?
well, I've worked for a startup that has had traditional investment, and it was I guess I'll just say Open Garden. And it was a really cool product, cool idea.
Yes, it was.
Not necessarily a solid business model, however.
Okay.
So they basically were able to get investment based off of the expertise and the team behind that were building it. So there's just a lot of belief in being able to build the technology, which they did, but it just wasn't necessarily monetizable. And in the end, the VCs completely replaced all of the founders and all of the
They took control of the company.
They took control of the company, and now it's just this, use fire chat at concerts. Instead of this really profound use case of decentralized peer-to-peer messaging and I don't know. I guess I guess Silicon Valley gets pretty desperate, and
sure.
if you're dealing with that kind of money, then you want to figure out really obvious use cases that you can pitch to Ticketmaster or whatever, and
right.
make big deals.
But to solve the issues you described, you see ICOs as a solution?
I think it's the beginning of a trial time. Okay. So being able to invest, do crowdsource type investments, there's somewhere in between a VC and your grandma selling their house to invest in this random token to make a bunch of money. There's something in between that probably is better, that probably works, and I just don't think we've navigated that yet. So I do think I like the fact that ICOs are happening now, and everyone's getting screwed now, so we can get that out of the way.
Get that out of our systems.
Progress forward and learn lessons and actually figure out the how to use them, because I'm not a big fan of capitalist driven market business.
Woo!
So, or solely capitalist.
Right.
Having competition between from the VC investment is really important. You don't want to only have that option of VC investment.
Sure, yeah. Absolutely.
So,
have options.
Exactly, and I think that's what ICOs are opening up. It's just, it's just so risky. Of course, that's also what everyone also says. Whenever you're launching a cryptocurrency or an ICO, you say, don't invest more than what you're willing to lose. That's what everyone says, and no one listens.
Yeah, no, it's true. Sure, what do you got, Kroll?
So on the point of the happy medium between VCs and grandma selling her house, I think it's a very important point. The Jobs Act, I think, does a great job with sort of helping that with enabling equity crowdfunding and things like that.
Okay.
But a lot of people don't realize when they're getting into an ICO that you have no claim to any equity, no claim to any underlying asset, no claim to any cash flow. So you're essentially betting entirely on the fact that there's ecosystem demand for a certain token.
Right.
The problem with not just BAT, but I think most of them right now is investors usually are not getting in to get access to the network.
Sure.
I mean, there were tokens that I've experimented with before, and there's tokens where I just flipped it at the ICO.
Yep.
And I think a vast majority of people presently sort of fall into the latter category.
Yeah, are doing that. Yeah, I agree with that.
And that sort of brings up an interesting legal question as well, because if it talks, barks like a duck.
Yeah, what's going on?
Yeah.
Well, and then there's also people are just seeing this bubble trend and they want to get into it before it crashes.
Right.
And it's like a self-fulfilling bubble. It keeps feeding itself. And also, it's driving the whole Ethereum price, because the companies themselves don't want to sell the Ether that they're getting, or the Bitcoin, because it's going up still. And then all of a sudden, they're all going to want to...
Last one out's a rotten egg.
Yeah. So, it's just a ticking time bomb. at this point.
Sure. I mean, Ryan, you got any thoughts on ICOs? I mean, yay, nay? I've been very nay. I mean, though most people know that.
I have for a long time as well.
Sure.
Been very nay. Alexandria hasn't done an ICO.
Bravo.
We picked a blockchain that already existed.
Zcash didn't
so
either,
no
correct?
No, we have a founder's reward.
You have a founder's reward. Okay, so you kind of have something like with that. I always felt that was sort of different, that wasn't exactly an ICO.
Oh, it's definitely not an ICO.
Right, okay.
It's the first 4 years, 1/20th of the mining reward goes to a founder's pot.
Okay, so
it's just a fixed percentage of all the mining will go to Zcash developments.
Right, okay.
And no, there's no like buying in or anything like that.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like Bitcoin where you have to mine or, have a
Exactly.
business where you accept or,
Sure, so Alexandria didn't do one either.
Yeah, Alexandria didn't do one, and right now, because I do watch all of this stuff very closely,
Sure.
And I'm in the same boat as Paige, I try to stay away from the capitalist elements of this whole industry.
Woo!
Ever
Grill's
since-
like, what the hell did I walk into? What's going on here?
On the
ever
other
since
side of the table.
Bitcoin in 2011 was a totally different scene, and I liked going to the meetups and going to these different events and seeing the community aspect of it.
Sure.
PorcFest was a big Bitcoin event, and there were not any VCs here. So basically, I've seen it change over the time, and I do a lot of live streaming of these blockchain events.
Yep.
And within the last 6 months, I think at least one presentation every meetup that I live stream ends with, and our ICO is launching next month.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there going, I'm making commercials for you fuckers now.
Yeah.
And so I got so irritated by that it has gotten to a point now where I just don't even want to associate. I can't associate with projects that are going to do things like
Yeah.
that.
No, I that's definitely kind of really the that's where I'm leaning, like heavy, is that I just don't even want to talk about them. I don't even want to mention them on the show or whatever. So
that's even another trend that was at Consensus. I should have mentioned when we were talking about
a lot of
before.
these ICOs.
Everyone was just talking about the ICOs.
Yeah,
Were you
yeah.
at Consensus?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so that's ICOs. I mean, that's kind of the shtick. What do we got here?
So funny thing from Consensus, it was at the Marriott Marquis this year, and because of all the price movements going up and down, the Marriott Wi-Fi got rate limited and banned by Cloudflare.
Cloudflare, yeah. Wow. Okay.
Because there's what kind of red flag is it when 5,000 people from the same IP try logging in? So.
Yeah. So funny
So this
business.
is hilarious.
Funny business going on.
And I think probably 3 out of 5 laptops that were in front of me were on some sort of trading window.
Sure. So that was what was going down. So anyway, well, the ICO thing is definitely something we're going to be keeping an eye on. I thought everybody had great points here. Paige, thank you so much, as always, for being on the show.
I'll be back soon.
Yeah, you'll be on soon. So
Yeah.
we like to connect. So at IOPTIO, IOPTIO. Of course, I'll put in the show notes if people want to follow Paige, and of course you should be. Of course, Mr. Taylor, we might have mentioned it earlier, but ADJYLEAK, ADJYLEAK. You can find him on Twitter, follow him on YouTube, one of the best videographers in the world. For Kirill to
At KGOUROV, Twitter, add me,
Got
LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever you guys want.
fantastic. So thank you all so much for being on. And of course, Dan Kroll as well was on. And you can find Dan at Oblivion?
Oblivion.
Orblivion, at Orblivion. I'll put all that in the show notes. And of course, freeross.org. It was really great to have Lyn on earlier. So anyway, thank you, everybody. And I'll see you on the other side.
Woo! Wasn't that something special? I tell you, I've really never done anything quite like that before. So that was an experience for me, and I hope you enjoyed it. Next week we'll be back to. Don't worry, I'll be back in the studio doing what I do. We're not going to, I know some people are asking about the intros. In fact, a lot of people were asking about the intros at PorcFest. They will be coming. And if you don't know what the intros are, because I know I got a lot of new listeners coming off of my talks at PorcFest, if you don't know what the intros are, well, I'll let you know once I start airing them what exactly those things are. So we'll just leave it at that for right now. But for everybody else, at least that way you know what's going on. So the exciting announcement that I want to tell you about is, and this is really, I can't begin to tell you, this is a dream come true for me. It really is. I just released my first book. Yep, it's a book. It's out there. It's on Kindle. Right now, it's only on Kindle. There will eventually be paperback versions. There will eventually be more open source versions, ways that you can. I mean, if you want to buy it with Bitcoin, you can just go to Gift, right? Gift.com, and then you can buy it through Amazon or whatever. But if you want to buy it independently, I'm working. I'll make it so that you can do that. But let's talk a bit about this book. What is this book? What's going on with it? And I want you to understand what the book's about. Kind of to manage expectations, perhaps. So the title of the book is Dark Android 2017 edition, the no-nonsense guide to securing your smartphone and taking back your privacy. There it is. That's the title. And this is, while it's Dark Android, now, longtime listeners to Sovryn Tech, or new listeners that have listened back to a lot of the old episodes, know about Dark Android and what I call the Dark Android project. The Dark Android project I started as, okay, what if I wanted to really create this, hyper-private, super secure, anonymous, Android mobile device, okay, that I could use to, go and do the business that I need to do and, kind of try and thwart various alphabet soup organizations, right? And it's very popular. A lot of people love it. There was a web page called darkandroid.info. Okay, now when you type in darkandroid.info, it takes you right to this book, Dark Android 2017 edition. But now I want you to understand what this book is about and why I wrote it and why I made it. Okay, this is a how-to guide, all right, for setting up Signal, whole disk encryption on your Android device, PGP, and I explain how PGP works. I have a bit of a Bitcoin guide, setting up mycelium. There's, just a bunch of different things in this. It chalks up to about 10 chapters. And like I said, it weighs in at about 150 pages, but understand, most of those 150 pages are screenshots. Like, a lot of it is screenshots. I mean, I wrote a lot too, but there's a lot of screenshots there. And those are for, to make this, I mean, the purpose of this book is, now, if you're a long-time listener, if you're somebody that's been, if you're on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being very technical, 1 being having no technical ability, okay, the Dark Android project historically has been more for the people that are a 10, okay, or an 8 to 10 on the tech scale as far as being highly technical, right, being very tech savvy. This book is for those 8 to 10s to share with their family. This is the book for the people that are 1 to 5 or something like that. And I've already had people check it out. I've had people give me reviews, and they've said that this is a very easy guide. This is a guide that I could give to my brother. This is a guide I could give to my friend. This is a guide I could give to my family member. Because like I was saying in my PorcFest talk about reclaiming privacy in our mobile world, look, we got to get everybody kind of on board with a lot of these encryption technologies. That's what really makes it work. That's what helps us more guarantee that we're actually going to have that privacy when we shoot for it. So this is a guide for the layman, for everyone. It's really designed that way. Anybody of any technical level could really get something out of this. Honestly, even if you're super tech savvy and you know all this shit, maybe you'll enjoy the basics on this. Okay, so there's a lot. There's a lot to take away from it. It sells for $2.99. That's the price I have going for it. Not much. Like I said, eventually, right now it's only on Kindle. Which, look, folks, this is a book for the masses. This is a book to get people on board with encryption. This is a book to explain things, etc., etc. Okay. So, where do most people buy their ebooks from? Kindle. Okay. So I'm trying to reach them. I'm trying to get to them. All right, not even the Sovryn Tech listener necessarily that I'm going after. This is the book for Sovryn Tech listeners to share with everybody else. All right, I mean, and it's certainly something that Sovryn Tech listeners can get a lot out of, no doubt about that. Okay, but that's the goal with this book. If you're wondering, who's the audience for this, this is a how-to guide for everybody to start using these technologies. And you may think, well, Signal's so basic, you just install it, blah, 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 and away you go. Yeah, but you don't know anything about, do you know about the disappearing messages? Do you know how to, confirm the keys of the person that you're talking to and all that gets broken down here with screenshots, and in-depth explanations and all of that. And I put a little bit of my own flair and flavor in it, of course. So I'm really excited about this. It's my first book that I've ever really published. I think it's really cool. A lot of people very excited about it, and I think the audience at PorcFest they're certainly going to get something out of it, I think. So all you have to do, you just go to darkandroid.info, and that will take you right to the book. No lines, no waiting. Takes you right to the Amazon page. If you go to zog.email, that you'll see underneath the email subscription form, it'll say Dark Android Book. You can click on that, and that will take you right to right to the book. So it's out there. This is definitely something for mass dissemination. It's actually quite a few people have already told me it's a very well done, a well thought out guide. So it's covering the basics, but it's not just that, it's also educational. It explains public key cryptography, and I guarantee you it's explaining it in a way that just about anybody can understand it. If there's any hope of people understanding it, this book will probably tell you how that goes. I'm very proud of it. I love it. Other people have already said that they love it, that have read it. It's only been out for a few days now. I wanted it ready for my PorcFest talk so that the people at PorcFest, would have something to get. Again, just it's so cool to finally be an author. I can't tell you. So another feather in the cap of the Golden Stallion, no doubt about it. But anyway, that's enough for this week. We'll be back to regular episodes, of course, next week. All kinds of tech to talk about. But this was so much fun. I had a ton of fun doing this. PorcFest, the event overall was fantastic. Maybe I'll do a bit of a review on that for Patreon. If you want to become a Sovryn Tech patron, again, all I ask is $1 a month. You can do more. You can do a lot more. A lot of people do. But all I ask is $1 a month, and you get access to hundreds of hours of content, and you get new content every week just for Sovryn Tech patrons. So just go to sovryntech.com for that, SOVRYNtech.com. That'll take you right to the Patreon page. And if you want to get your hands on this book, or you want to give it out as gifts, give out gift codes for Kindle or whatever, just go to darkandroid.info, and you're right there. So anyway, that's enough for this week. Oh boy, has it been enough for this week. I will see you on the other side.
You just experienced Sovryn Tech. Go to sovryntech.com, that's SOVRYNtech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovryn Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.